Formulas and properties. So when we are solving our percents, we're going to set it up it's good enough. Okay. Using the percent proportion. The percent as a percent, not as a decimal. Over 100 equals the is part of your equation over the of part of your equation. We will be using this. We'll be setting it up like this for essentially every problem. That's what we're going to do. Okay? Percent over 100 equals is over of. If you remember this, you set it up. We will have the 100 is always the same. The percent, the is, or the of, you will have two of them. The other one will be your variable. So it says what percent. Ooh, that means I don't know what my percent is, so my variable goes where the percent is. If it says 15% of what? Ooh, of what? That means I don't know what my of is. That's where my variable goes. Okay? 25% of 30 is what? Ooh, the is my what. That's where my variable goes. Plug in the two numbers you have and the 100 that's always there, and then fill in the rest. Now, sometimes another version of this, an equivalent, percent over 100 equals the part over the total, which is what the of and the is are. Okay? They're the parts and the totals. This one you'll do if you have what percent, 300 kids out of, 752 said that they wanted puppy for Christmas. What percent is that? Well, the part and the total is the how many kids out of how many kids. And that's where the part and the total comes from. I think there's like maybe one problem we'll do that with, but there might also be one on your homework that you'll want to do that with. Okay. Now, there is an equation that you can also use. Okay. This is the percent equation. And this is essentially a rearrangement of this one. Okay. The part equals the percent times the whole. This can also be used, but pretty much we're going to use the ratio to set it up for every single one of them. Okay. If you do use this one, the percent needs to be made into a decimal if you do that. And then we have our last little formula we have to talk about. This is simple interest. I know all of you or most of you should be interested in money. Okay. The interest rate equals our principal times the rate times time. The principal is the amount of money we start with. So if you have a savings account, how much money you get, how much money you earn on that savings account, which I wouldn't put any money in a savings account nowadays, so you're not going to make crap, okay, is equal to how much money you put in times the rate, which is the interest rate, but you need to make it a decimal. It is important that you make your interest rate a decimal for this. And then time, how many years you have it invested for. Okay? You put it in for 5 years, how much money do you have at the end of it? How much money did you earn at the end of 5 years? That's how much money you earned. It's not how much is in there, because how much is in there is that plus what you put in to begin with. Okay? And that's simple interest. Questions? Language. Okay, so the second part we're dealing with, common percents recommended as decimals and fractions. It's important to understand basic percentages and fractions and understand the relationship between them, how much a percent is related to a fraction. So, how do I convert percent to decimal? Does anybody remember? Yeah, you move the decimal point to the left. How many spaces? 2. You move it 2 spaces to the left. So you start here is where it is now, and you move it over 1, 2 to get 0.01. Okay, so that would be the decimal. You move it over 2 places, you get the decimal. Okay. Sometimes you want to work things as a percent, sometimes you want to work them as a decimal. Okay. Now, as a fraction, you want to write a percent as a fraction. That's also very, very easy to do. Because a percent literally means per 100. How many parts of 100? That's where the word percent comes from. Per for part, cent for 100, part of 100. So if I have 1%, that means I have a fraction of 1 out of 100. That's where it comes from. It's the number on top, what the percentage is over 100. How many parts out of 100? That's what a percent is. So it's really easy to do. Now, so the decimal on this one, So for 5%, our decimal would be what? 0.05, moves it 2 places over. Now, our fraction, I've already revealed what it is, but that's in the reduced form. You always start with what it is out of 100, 5 out of 100. 5% is 5 out of 100. It reduces down to 1/20th. Does that make sense? And the decimals are, like I said, they're easy. 10%, that is 0.1. 10% would be 10 out of 100, which would reduce to 1/10, because the zeros would just cancel. You got a bunch of zeros in the numerator and a bunch of zeros in the denominator. Any zeros, you can just line them up and cancel them out. Okay, as long as the same number of zeros top and bottom. Okay. 20%, 0.2, which would be 20 over 100, which would reduce to, no, it doesn't do that. Got to put it down between, there we go, 1/5. That's what it would reduce to. So 20% is 1/5. Some of these ought to be common. 25%, 0.25, but 25% as a fraction is what? It's 1/4. 25% is 1/4. It's 1/4. 25 cents is a quarter. 1/4, 1/4. That's where that all ties in together. Okay. What about the next one? 33.3%. Okay, that 0.33 as a decimal. What about as a fraction? Anybody know what 33.3% is as a fraction? It's a fairly common one. It's one you need to know. It's what? It's 1/3. Okay. These are some values you should know. You should know certain basic values. And 1/3 is 33%. 50% as a decimal, easy enough, 0.5. What is 50% as a fraction? 1/2. Because if you have 50% of something, that means you have half of that object. I have 50% of a pizza. That means I got half a pizza. Okay. So, 66.6%. Decimal's easy. What is that as a fraction? 2/3. Because if 33% was 1/3, 66% is going to be 2/3. 75%, 0.75. What is that as a fraction? 3/4. Because 75 cents is how many quarters? It's 3/4. And then 100% of something as a decimal is 1. As a fraction is 1. Because it's the whole amount. If you have 100% of something, you have all of it. Okay, that's what 100% means. So you've got all of it. Okay. Questions so far?
No.
Okay. Now comes the fun part. Okay, now, remember, we're going to be using the proportion. Remember, using the proportion, the percent does not need to be converted. And our proportion was what? It was percent over 100 equals what? Is over of, right? is over of. If you do that, set that up, and it's easy. There are three things in our problem we have, and we have three spaces to fill. Two of them that we know. One of them is the thing we don't know. That's going to be the variable. So this one says what percent. When I see the what, ooh, that's my x. So I get x for my percent of 56. 56 is my of. 42 is my is. Percent over 100 of, is of. You have the three parts. You have the percent, you have the of, you have the is. And now you can do this. We've been doing this all week. How do you solve a proportion? You cross multiply. So 56x equals 4,200. What do I do now? Divide by 56. And x equals, what do you get for that? Is it 75%? So you end up getting 75, which means I have 75% because it asks for what percent. So my answer is 75%. Piece of cake. Set it up, piece of cake. So, same thing on the next one. Percent over 100 equals is over of. What's going to go in the top here? X, because it don't know the percentage. What percent? That's where my X goes. What's going to go in the top on this side? 30. And what's going to go in the bottom on this side? 90. That's the hard part. Once you get that done, you're pulling out your calculator to do the rest of it. Okay, X times 90, 90X, 30 times 100, 3,000. 3,000, not 30,000, 3,000. Yeah. Don't want those extra zeros.
Oh, no, we don't.
Okay. Divide both sides by 90. What's my answer? You should be working along with me. 33.3. So X is 33.3%. Which, if you go back and look at 30 over 90, that reduces to 1/3. So if I have 1/3, my percentage is 33%. That makes sense. Okay, this one says to use the percent equation. We're going to ignore that and keep doing what we've been doing. So I have over 100 equals is of. So what goes on the top? X. What goes on the top on the other side? 2.5. My is over 40. Cross multiply and solve. Do that. What do we get? 6.25%. Seems like a small number, right? However, you know, I have 0.25 out of 40. That should be a small number. I have a very small part of 40. I got, 40 apples. 2.5 of them gives me what percentage? Okay, 2.5 is a very small part of 40. So it makes sense that I get a small percentage. Now the next one is a little more involved. It's also a little more of an application. A dress shirt normally costs $38.50. It is on sale for 30% off. What is the sale price? Okay, you want to know if they're giving the charging the right price or not. I remember having a group of kids one time go through a sale ad and figuring out if the prices that they said they were going to charge were accurate according to what their ad was. Usually the price that they say you're going to have to pay is actually better than the ad by a penny or two just to cover their butt. But I remember one particular company, they were always wrong. Their math was always wrong every time. Oh, no, because email didn't exist at the time. And the company no longer exists anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so we want to do the same setup here. What goes on top? X, because that's the... No, actually, it's not. What is it on this side? It's 30 because I have 30%. It's 30% off, so that's by percent. Now it becomes harder. Okay? This actually works more with the percent over 100 equals the part over the total. This actually works better with that version of it. So the other number I'm given is the $38.50. Is that the part of the price or is that the total of the price? That's the total. That's the original cost. $38.50. And X is what goes on top. Guys, stop talking. Okay. Now we cross multiply. 100 times X equals 30 times $38.50. And you get 550. 1,155. Thank you. Divide both sides by 100. And you get 1155. Now, is that what you're actually paying? No, that's not what you're actually paying, is it? That's how much you're saving. Because that's the 30%. That's what they're taking off the price. That's not what it's going to cost you. 30% off, that's the 30% off. How do I find out what I'm actually paying? Subtract. I take the original cost, $38.50, and subtract the $11.55. You got your calculator? Somebody do that for me. I'm being lazy. $26.95. Which be, if I'm figuring out how much money I'm spending, would be $27, but that's okay. I know, but this is what we really want to have. Okay, questions? So read the question carefully when you're doing your classwork today, because there's a couple of problems like this, and there's a couple of problems where your final answer that you got here, the $11.55, would be what you're actually paying. Okay, next page. We're back to the percent 100 equals is of. So I still need to just fill in the blanks. What's going to go on top of the first one? The 125, because we got 125%. What goes on top of the other side? 17.5, because that's my is 17.5. What goes on the bottom of the other side? The X, because that's what we're looking for. What number? That's my X. Cross multiply. 125X equals 1,750. Yeah. Two places. Divide by 125, and X equals 14. Yeah. Same thing on the next one. Let's set it up. What goes on top of the first one? 25, because we have 25%. That's my percent. 25 goes here. What goes on top of the second one? 10, because my is 10. What goes on the bottom of the second one? X, because that's what we don't know. Cross multiply and solve. 25 times x, 25x. 100 times 10, 1,000. Divide by 25. X equals, thank you, 40. I was just thinking that's what it was. I'm glad you confirmed it for me. Questions? Okay, one last problem to go. This is another one that's also very simple, but we have to remember a formula from the first page of your notes. This is using simple interest. Our simple interest formula, the interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. Okay. What is my principal on this one? How much money do I start with? 840. That's my principal. What is my rate? What's my interest rate? 4.5%. However, for the needs of this problem, I need to make it a decimal. So you move it two places to make it 0.045. When I do my work, I need to make my percent a decimal for the interest rates problems. How much time am I going to be doing this for?
4 years.
4 years. So if I want to know my interest, it's very easy. My interest rate is my principal times my rate times how long I'm doing it for. That's it. You identify those three things and multiply them together. Most typical thing is to remember to convert your percentage to a decimal. So, how much money did I make in 4 years? Not really.
151.
151. What is it? 2.2. Because it's money, we add the extra decimal point. So I made $151.20 in 4 years.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Oh, you'd make a whole lot less than that now. 4.5% interest rate. You will never find 4.5% interest rate on a savings account today. A really good one today is 1/4%. If you can get better than 1/4% interest rate on a savings account, you're doing good. Savings accounts aren't worth it. The only thing they're good for is a safe place to put your money rather than your mattress. That's it. Used to be you could make a little bit of money. Now, the banks don't work that way anymore. Any questions? Because the banks